I have a desperate need for there to be more analytical videos about anime on YouTube. These days, the kind of people who watch YouTube largely don't, I think, branch out into reading text posts around the internet as much. I can certainly say it's true of myself. I don't do nearly as much reading as I used to. I prefer there to be content in video form. And I think that outside of YouTube is sort of a different sphere of influence, where the kind of people who I would expect to be watching my videos, I wouldn't expect to be going around reading text analysis of a bunch of stuff. So, regardless of whether there's text analysis of the kind of shows that I'm going to talk about, I think I need video analysis of it to exist to help me with my job. And here's why. I'm going to describe the video game analysis circuit right now. Video games are talked about on YouTube to such an epic degree that there's so few games that no one's talking about. Like, you have to have a really obscure indie game for there to be absolutely no one saying anything about it. And there's a lot of people writing analytically about, every new big game that comes out. Like, all of them. There's, 10 people who will write an analytical video about it. And this is great because it means that there's a ton of different perspectives, and no one person has to feel responsible for representing other people's perspectives. Like, for instance, when BioShock Infinite came out, then the initial reviews of that game and, vaguely analytical points people were making were mostly very positive. Like, you had Adam Sessler gave it this great review, Yahtzee loved the game, there were other people who were excited about it, people talking about the reasons they thought the story was great and stuff like that. And then you had the people who were kind of a little disappointed with it, like Aaron Signal, but the video that came out that was super gratifying to me was when Matthew Matosis just ripped the game to shreds. Because I thought that game was relatively terrible, and, I was just waiting for someone to come along who was going to break down the reasons why. And Matthew Matosis did it in the most beautiful detail I'd ever seen, and it was great. But a huge part of what made that video so cathartic was that there were so many other people praising the game, that it was in response to something that he didn't understand in a way. Like, why is everyone praising this when I have all these problems with it? And I think that for the people who love that game, that video wouldn't have bothered them because there were already so many positive reviews out there that, knowing there's one guy who completely hates it doesn't really take anything away from the game. There's a million other people writing positive reviews. You can just, find someone who aligns more with what you're thinking. And the problem with anime is that this isn't happening. Not every anime gets talked about. Barely any get talked about, really, in the grand scheme of things. I mean, every new season, there's 45 new shows. And, even if we're talking about just the mainstream reviewers, like Glass Reflection, that guy could put out, 5, I don't know how many he puts out, probably 5 reviews a season of different shows. So that leaves 40 that he's not talking about, And then you've got, all the other reviewer guys, a lot of them only put out, one video a month or one video every few months, and so there's just not time for them to cover every, show that's coming out. And so I feel like there's a lot of shows that just don't have any perspectives, much less one that goes in depth about what's good about them. And I need there to be analytical stuff. Those reviews are fine and all for when the show first comes out and you need I guess consumer reviews on YouTube. I don't personally see the point, but I'd love to see more analytical content about all these shows. And it makes it difficult for me when there's a show that I don't like that other people do like, because people constantly ask me my opinions of shows like that. And I can't figure out if it would be gratifying for me or for anybody if I made a video about them. Now, when I made my videos on Sword Art Online, what was so gratifying about that to me is I personally had never seen a negative opinion of Sword Art Online. I had not been reading anime forums or anything for quite a while when I made that video. So all I saw was that the show was really popular and people kept talking about it. And I watched it and I was like, what the fuck? Everything's wrong. And so I wrote this huge video about it. And for a lot of people, that was to them what that Matthew Matosis video was to me. Like, finally seeing someone represent all the things that they didn't like about the show, which is why that video is insanely popular. And, you know, to a lesser extent, I got to do that with Erased, where I think the reason that video was so controversial was that I made it like right when the show had just finished. You know, a lot of people were still high on enjoying it and stuff, and there wasn't, like, they probably hadn't seen like a ton of praise for this show from other people. But for me, what sort of made it happen was that Mother's Basement had written these two like in-depth analytical videos about different scenes from the show, which had like basically the stuff he said was like, yeah, okay, this is what it would be for someone who likes the show. But for me, those scenes did nothing for me. So it was interesting for me to then go and make this negative video about the show that was like presenting the opposite viewpoint from the rampant love that was going on for it at the time. But I get asked like every day about the certain handful of shows that I don't want to watch because I don't really care for them or care about them. But like, they are Your Lie in April, Ore Gairu, or my romantic love comedy Snafu, Shinsekai Yori, and I think I'm missing something. And then like there's two that I've finished in the past and don't like, which are Ergo Proxy and Katana Gatari that I talked about on a previous video. And like, I get asked about my opinions of these shows a lot, and like, for me, the idea of writing like a long form analysis of why I don't like Shinsekai Yori, it feels like it won't help people because of the fact that there isn't a giant analytical video about what's good about Shinsekai Yori, you know? Because it's clearly a show that most of the people who've seen it seem to like. It's very well reviewed, it's on a lot of favorites lists, you know, highly regarded show, and it doesn't work for me at all. Like, I don't like anything about it, essentially, from what I've seen. So if there was like a large scale movement in service of defending this show, then I would have something to like, you know, like to understand, because I don't really know why people like the show. I've seen reviews of it, but those don't tell me anything really, because a review that says like it's well written and it has themes, I'm like, yeah, but where is that in the show? Like, show me, point to it, get out the show and point to the thing and say, that's the moment that made me think the writing is good. And I can say, okay, I either agree or disagree with that, you know, or I either felt the same or didn't feel the same. But if I don't have that, then I have so little to go on. And like, you know, I feel like there's just a gaping need for these things to exist, you know, so that I can then write, like, and not just for that reason, like, I want to understand some of these. Like, every time, like, I have this old Ergo Proxy review where I just kind of said, like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand this show. I thought it was boring. I thought it was dumb and lame. And, you know, people continually will tell me, like, that I just didn't understand it, or that it was wrong of me to write a review when I didn't understand the show. And I'm like, well, that's just my perspective on it. If there's a large enough contingent of people who didn't understand the show and thought it was shitty for that reason, then those are the people who will resonate with my review. That's the perspective I'm presenting, is here's the opinion of the kind of person who watched this show and didn't get it, you know? But I understand why there's so many people who aren't happy with that, because there is no hour-long Ergo Proxy analysis. It doesn't exist. No one has written the in-depth, like, totally explained critical analysis of this show. And like, I'll never get to everything, and there's so many of the battles that I'm worried about fighting, no one else seems to be, you know, or that, like, I feel like every anime analyst person or reviewer are all kind of in their own world right now. Like, there's not a sense of everyone's playing off of each other in a big way, you know. I think me and Mother's Basement have started doing that. I think Canepa started doing that with me and just with the culture in general, where he started making these, like, you know, really educational videos and, like, sort of I think he's trying to capture a certain movement in anime towards understanding more things about creators, which is a great road to go down. So like, I feel like when I watch a Canepa video, I can take all the things he's saying into consideration for my next video, because they can play off of each other like that. They're in this same analytical space, and you know, I need more people like that. I need more people covering all these classic or older shows, or you know, like not just writing every like there's a new channel called Pause and Select that's pretty good. But they've mostly been writing about like new current shows, which is, I mean, fair enough. They're trying to launch their channel. They're pretty small. Go give them a look. They write some pretty entertaining videos. But I'd love to see a channel like them go back and like talk about their favorites. You know, like explain why your favorite show is your favorite show, and then I could maybe, you know, have more of a springboard to talk about those. I really hate that, like, I feel like the anime community right now on YouTube is really latching on to like current stuff and trying to maintain that so that they can grow their audiences, because there's not enough like big YouTubers who can go back and do old stuff like I can, where I'm, you know, I'm sort of big enough that I'm at liberty to do whatever I want. And even more so than me, Demolition D, like the reason he can do Should You Watch as like a series where he almost only talks about like relatively obscure shows, you know, like he made a fucking video about Alien 9 that has like over 100,000 views. Like that's more than the number of people who have seen Alien 9, you know, because he's just a famous YouTuber to some extent, so he can do that. Like, and we need more people to be able to do that. We need more people who are on a level where they can talk about whatever they want, and it's not about the analytics and like what's going to get them popular and what the audience will listen to. Like, we need to develop an audience who's curious about more shows, you know? We need more like, we need to get to a point where we don't have to make Should You Watch. We can then analyze those shows. You know, like, Demo has to talk about Alien 9 in a funny 5-minute video, because if he just wrote an analysis of Alien 9, no one would know what the fuck he was talking about, because no one's seen the fucking show, you know? We need to get to a point where we can write, like, beyond what, like, you know, like, I was critical of Anime Every Day recently, but I kind of understand why he's doing these here's 10 great anime from the 90s, because it's harder for you to like just take one of those and actually write a long form video about it. Like, who's gonna care if I wrote about Martian Successor Nadesico tomorrow? Like, how many people are going to watch that and give a single fuck or know what Martian Successor Nadesico is? Like, I need to have stuff like my 10 must-see anime you can watch right now, because then, like, a year later after I made that video and people have actually watched those 10 shows, then I can analyze those 10 shows and maybe someone will have seen them. So I think that's what we need. We need, like, more people doing this so we can cover more ground and, like, make it so more people are knowledgeable about shows, and then more people are analyzing those shows. And then we'll be able to have multiple perspectives on those shows. Because as it stands, if I made a video just shitting on Your Lie in April out of nowhere, then it's just going to make people mad, because people love that show and people want, you know, something that represents how they feel, and no one's really done that I know of. I've never seen an in-depth analytical review of what's good about Your Lie in April. So if I'm the first person to write an in-depth analytical post about it, then the only opinion that's out there is going to be one that's totally contrary to what most people feel about the show. And I think that's a weird landscape to be publishing into, and that's why it's so hard for me to get, like, excited about, like, trying to write about those shows, you know? And I know there's text bloggers who've covered some of this stuff. Like, every time I mention that I don't like Oregairu, then someone will link me to, like, a Wrong Every Time post or something, like one of these anime bloggers who've covered the show. And I'm like, that's nice and all, but I really need it in video, because that's where I'm working, you know? Like, I need it in this space where I know that other people have seen it, that there's a, you know, a community around it. And yeah, that's what I'd like to see. Please make analytical videos about shows I don't like so I don't have to watch them. Please.